Hey there everybody, I've just been marking up the next step of building up these H-blocks, so sort of balcony pieces, marking on everything that needs to be cut out now. I've done all these floors, they just need the corners cutting, and marking out the roofs just sort of where there's going to be cut out, so the stairwell is going to come up through here, there's going to be balconies and stuff put in. So I just wanted to show you what I'm doing with the slightly more complicated bits, because if you look at this bit, these are the bits that I'm going to cut out, and then I've also marked the stair elevations on the back. So I just wanted to show you what I'm doing. I'm using a pencil and a biro. Pencil is sufficient to mark up this material. I've got my drawings here so that I have all my measurements, but also I've just done my test piece so that I know what I'm doing when I'm making this video. So first of all, if you just take one of them, in the case of this, I'm using 10mm from either side, which makes up the spacing on either edge of the window. So I'm just using pencil to begin with, and I'm marking in my 10mm. I'm just going to slide it across 10mm. And I'm just going to show you a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the pencil to mark in sort of the rough lines, if you like, the elements. So then I'm dropping in, these are my guides. The guides are being used as the sort of principal lines, partly so I can measure off of them, and partly so that I get all my measurements accurate. It's kind of handy, like see I'm just running a line, so I've got that line running all the way up. Now I know that I've got a 19mm drop off from the roof to the floor line and the top of the window line on the next floor down, so I'm just using the middle of the rule because I find it easier. Matching out the edge, marking up my 19mm. Doesn't really matter as long as you are measuring. I find it easier to go for any number with a 0 as a starting point, just because if you're always trying to use the end of the ruler, it just becomes a pig and unwieldy. So then that gives me my 19. Then the next measurement is going to be 83 down from there. This is from floor bottom to floor bottom. So I know that this 19mm includes the bottom of the roof floor. So then I go 83 down from there. And then I'm getting into my first floor one, dropping that line. Now I'm using 19mm as a measurement for these stairwell half walls, if you like. They're so it's 3mm taking into account the depth of the material I'm using. And then there is 16mm elevation above that, which wow, 28 plus 3, 28, 29, 30, 31, which is about, should cover about up to the waistline on an infinity miniature. So that is sufficient to provide partial cover. So all of these buildings have been planned with this kind of mode of cover being built in to the right size or the right scale, but also I'm trying to optimize the size of these windows. I want big windows on the exteriors of these buildings, partly because I think it gives a sort of very modern sci-fi feel. So I've got a window marked in there. but also partly because I want reach in buildings. I want buildings where you can interact with them. You don't have to take them to pieces, but there's still line of sight blocking, and I felt like this facility. So then once I've just blocked in this, what I'm doing is I'm just getting in this case a blue biro, but blue, red, black, whatever. And then once I've marked up everything in pencil, I am just marking the cut lines in the biro just to make it really obvious to myself, so that later on I don't look at it and go, oh look, there's a million lines, and then accidentally overcut or undercut something. And in this way I minimise the chances of me making stupid errors, and I just put an X in the area that I'm actually going to cut away, which indicates to me where I'm going to cut. So then, flipping it over, I'll just show you on this one, because you see if this one here, this is where the stairwell is going to be coming up. This is a particularly awkward bit of stairwell. It's going to be on the inside of the building. It'll actually be sort of an almost spiral where it's elevating very rapidly. It's going to be a pig to make that bit of stairwell, but I'm not going to just draw that in on here at the moment. But this is why you put the stair elevations here. Because when you cut this out, you have all the heights of the stairs already marked on. It's much easier to mark them on at this point in the process. So right now I'm just going to crack on with marking everything up, and when I come to some of the more finicky things I will give you another little heads up on that bit. So I'll catch you in a bit. So just a quick note about marking up odd angles, diagonals, what have you. So you can see on this one there's this diagonal here, which is actually going to be the roof line for this top section, which is the entryway up onto the roof from the stairwell. So in order to do these lines, always mark out the vertical first. So you cut diagonal, cutting down the distance from the top of elevation to here. Put in this diagonal, and then off of the verticals just measure straight down the lines that you're using on the border. So I'll just quickly go over that for you so you can see. So once again, just first of all, just putting on the diagonal, which is the roof line. I'm having to use artificial light. If you can avoid using artificial light, this is a good thing. It's better to have decent ambient light than it is that. So this is actually coming straight from the corner here to there. When you're cutting this, always cut from the edge which is dropped down. So always cut from this edge to the corner, because otherwise you'll find funny things happen at the corner itself, and it can redirect your blade and you can do horrible things and mess everything up straight away. Then I'm just going to drop in. The reason for this is this ruler is actually not quite long enough for this purpose. So I have to take the lines pretty close but not right up to. I could swap over to the longer steel, but I just don't really have enough space, frustrating as that is. I mean, you may have realised that previously I had more space on this. That's because I was cutting not at my workstation, but in the living room, and that's not really appreciated. People need that room for other reasons, and yeah, so it's not really on to be hogging it all the time, which is it would be convenient for me. Again, I mean the pants are ready, to be honest with you. It can mark plastic, but when you just draw lines like this, it just leaves an indentation. But that's fine by me, until I actually mark it in with pen. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know. It's best fit, it's fine. So then, now that these are marked on, you need to make sure that you can see them, so I'm just going to mark on So then I wanted to get the diagonal, I'm going to use one of the 10s, stick in tight to the vertical, so I want this to be accurate. I'm using a 7mm depression here. It's just because I want to keep access to each area as well as possible. And again, like I say, I like to use something with a 0 also. 0.5mm marked on up to 10 centimeters. It's much easier to see what you're doing past 10 centimeters if you just want clear millimeters. So if you use like the 10 centimeters and higher numbers, it's just easier to see. Call me lazy, but I find it somewhat easier. And then that gives you your clean diagonal line, which matches up with the line up above it. As you can see, there are also some other awkward pieces on this. Again, this is all measured out, so I end up measuring each point. So I know that this is 83mm. No, this is 83. This is where I check it and find out that I've done this wrong, you know. Yeah. So this is 83mm, and then here to here is 83mm. So this is 19mm because that would be the height of one of these. I've got my measurements, so this is coming down 22. Then I know drop down 19. And I'm marking in the two horizontals here, and then I'm just putting in the points for where they meet up. Again, this is a sort of spiral stair, so this depth here is actually where the first rung of the stairwell is, and then the stairs will be following up inside this line here. This isn't particularly fiddly, but it's just to make a point. These are the interior partition walls, and I'm just marking up the different floor heights. It does involve stripping off the plastic because I'm going to need the floor heights when I'm actually putting the floors in, so I know where to fit everything and glue everything. So I'm just making a note that this is a partition wall. I'm noting, I don't know if you can really see, but I'm just noting the bottom. Then I'm marking up the elevations for each floor. So I'm marking the top line of the floor and taking into account the 3mm depth on the material. So I'm just going 83mm. So yeah, I'm using 80mm depth floors because it's an appropriate space. It seems to be a good size for gaming in terms of it gives you the reach and space. It gives you space to fit sort of larger miniatures. I mean, in real life, if you think the tag's like what, 60mm, 12 feet odd tall. I mean, where I live, I live in it's an old build type thing. We've got like 15-foot high ceilings. So you'd be able to fit a tag inside this kind of building. Not that you'd be able to walk on the floor, of course, because it would fall through. But just kind of try to get that balance between realism and gaming scale. I think it's quite a hard task to balance, and I think with bought scenery, it's certainly one of the things that I find hardest to balance. There seems to be a lot of stuff out there which to me doesn't feel quite right. So yeah, just so you can see that, it's just trying to get any reflection off it. Just marking on the floors, and I'll flip it over, rip off this, which I'm going to completely fail to do now that I'm on camera, of course. Come on. It's coming off so much easier a minute ago. And then I'm going to mark up this side the same. Now I know which the bottom is. The important thing is when I flip it over, I mark the bottom because I need to take all measurements off from the same edge. Okay, so I'm just going to crack on with this and I'll be back with you in a mo. So moving forward, I've just been marking up these ones, which are interior stairwell walls. If you can see the plans here, it's sort of this wall here, so you'll have the stairwell. It'll butt straight onto a piece which will be the bottom of the actual building itself. So hence the doors at the bottom come straight down. You just notice that I've just done a couple of little bits of etching, just using an HB pencil. Don't want to mark it in pen because obviously you need to cut it. This is a stage if you want to do etching, you can do etching. I think if I was etching on this side, which I may well do once I have cut these out, I'll use an allspike for that rather than a pencil, or at least I will do it after the cutting process so that I don't have confusion, basically. You notice these two lines here, this is just to mark where the material will go together for forming. It'll butt together. And so it sort of gives you a size. These buildings are going to be fairly tall. I wanted like tall, substantial buildings, hence they're 3 stories. These are the sort of minimum story height. Also, as this is a interior wall, this top edge will actually have the roof resting on it, so the overall building height will be 16 mil taller on average, with the top of the stairwell block coming up, I think it's about 45 mil higher or something. No, 80 mil higher, because it will be, you know, it will be another story effectively, which is 83 mil per story. So just wanted to quickly go over what I'm doing, like how I'm doing that. I'm actually marking the doors up first, so I am, again, you need to make sure you take from the bottom. Or you need to know which side you're taking your measurements from, and so that you don't end up with one set of measurements on one side which contradict another set of measurements on the other side. So I'm doing this by first of all marking out the floor heights, again as much as possible using the actual edge lines, because I'm not using a T-square set square. So I am using what I have available for making these angles as accurately as possible. When I am marking up doors, I'm taking measurements and drawing vertical lines which come from top to bottom. So I'm marking out the areas of the doors rather than trying to put dots down and join the dots. This is how to lay things up accurately. So in the case of this, I've got 45 mil off of either side. I've got a 27 mil door width. That's 25. That's 27. Then I'll just square up on the other side so that I can take this one. So that's 45, 25, 26, 27. By doing this, you get consistency with the door positioning, if nothing else. So just take 45, 27 across the bottom. Sorry, this is a little bit outside. Just trying to give you an impression of, in part again, how long it takes to do this stuff. Don't rush it. I mean, I'm doing 4 simultaneously, and just in terms of cutting out and marking up, I mean, I'm looking at about 8 hours work so far. These aren't going to be, you know, I'm going to make better in the future. This is a first set. Partly I'm just making sure that my hypothesis as such is accurate, and that the way I'm going about making these is functional. So then, again, this is why we're using a mixture of pen and pencil for marking these up. Get these right. and everything else falls into place by itself really. So once I have these lines, then I'm shortcutting it a bit, but it's like I'm actually just going, the height of the doors I'm using is 39mm, I want them big enough so that the miniatures can actually stand inside the doorway. Once you've got these verticals, you see you can just mark off on either side, and this gives you the points for operating across, because you'll be operating lines which are all consistent across the board. You can just use biro to cut the line in across. Don't get ahead of yourself. Like, I just measured the wrong measurement on the camera and I don't want to bore the shit out of you. But having marked up those, I'm just going to put in these top lines before I lose sight of the marks. At this point normally you see I would actually block out the entire door, but I'm not going to do that right now, I'll do it in a minute. And I would actually do the etching once I've blue marked everything. See now I'm rushing and I'm making mistakes, but fortunately I can just scratch through that. Biro comes off of the plastic pretty easily. This is the other reason. I will point out that Palite is designed for the print industry, so actually it takes mark making or paint. It's a very good surface for drawing on. So if you did want to do intricate designs, this stuff's actually perfect for it, because it'll take... So then with the etching, you see I'm just doing a horizontal line as a whatchamacallit, one of those things that goes around the edge of the room. It gathers dust on top and really annoys the hell out of me. See, I'm not always stupid, I don't always swear. Swearing is bad, everybody. Don't do it. It shows that you have a lack of vocabulary and that you don't know how to speak very well. Because it's a fallback, isn't it? Unless it's an expletive for a reason of frustration, in which case they can be quite useful for that, but actually, no, if there any good reason for it, and no bad ways of expressing yourself. So then just by using a pencil, as you can see, just cutting the line, that puts in the etching. And so and that's all I'm doing on the interiors of these. Like I say, if you wanted to, you could get very intricate. The other reason is that there'll actually be a runner mechanism across the top edge of these doors that I will put in later. I'll show you how that goes together, so that I will have sliding doors, so I don't feel the need to sort of mark in the edges of the doors, as the door itself will form an interesting interior detail. Also, I don't want to get too hung up on interior details, because essentially you could spend forever doing this. I mean, how long do you want to spend making these things? I do want them to look really, really nice, and ideally at some point in the future I will have nothing but buildings that look very much real, because I want them to have a cinematic feel in the battle reports I'm doing. So I'm just going to crack on with this and keep on marking up. I mean, I've been marking up for, I don't know, 6 hours or so now. It's cheaper. It's considerably cheaper, because if you look at the dimensions on this building, it's like 6" by 8" buildings, 3 stories. You will pay £50 a story if you buy a modular building of a similar ilk, and that means, whereas I'm shelling out like 25 quid. So if you are time rich, as I am at the moment, fortunately, this is an excellent way of getting into building your scenery and getting loads of really top-notch scenery for not a lot of money. However, if you're not time rich, I do strongly recommend going and buying pre-painted stuff. There's a lot of really good pre-painted stuff out there, but like I say, even for a sort of 6" by 8" 1-story block, which is, this is 1 story, you'll be looking at 50 to 70 quid, which is great if you have money, but right now I don't. Some point in the future I will look into acquiring some of them just for the sake of reviewing, and just so you can see what it looks like on the battlefield, and you can see what it's like next to my scenery and make your own decision up about what you like and what's cool and what's not. So I shall catch you shortly. So I'm just marking up the fire escape end, and realised that on this end I have these sort of cut-in pieces. I just wanted to quickly give you a rundown of how I'm doing that. So I've marked in the depth just as a vertical line of how deep I want the cut to be, and then I've got various measuring points, so I know that I want the top edge of the cut to be in line with the bottom edge of the windows, which I've already marked out on this. And then I'm just taking my measurements off the top. So it's like in the case of the first one, I've been doing that just by measuring it off the top. Sorry for the howling wind. And then it's just marking on a point there. That's 29mm down, just taking into account the depth of the wall on the roof and then the depth beneath that. The next one is 39, which is on the interior line. Again, I'm taking this from the roof. So 39. That gives me my first angle, and then I've got 132 down from here, so I'm just going to switch to 55 down from the mark that I previously placed here. So then I'm just going to do this quickly so you can see. I'm just swapping out the pen. I'm not bothering to draw these in a pencil, I'm just dropping them straight in a pen. Once I know where the lines go, I know where the lines go. The guidelines go in because they are reference points for all the other measuring. And these reference points are important in their own right, which is why they get left in. A lot of the time as well, like with things like the windows, when I'm drawing them in, I'll mark the points and I'll just join the points on from the reference lines. But I'll do like a reference point over here and a reference point over here, and then I'll just drop in those two lines using the other reference lines to indicate where to go. Just as a note on this with the etching, I'm etching these two vertical lines, and then I'm etching a sort of 5mm above and below, so there's what do you call them? The bits that go, the sills, that's right. So there's like the window sill, and then there's the sort of a sill over the top as well, effectively. I'm also doing 5mm down from the top edge, so just to give again little bits of detail to make it look a bit more like a building. So I'm just going to crack on with marking this stuff up, and I'll get back to you when I'm on to the final, like the most fiddly bit, which is actually the front of the building. And that's because there's a stairwell running all the way up, but there's a lot of cut out space and it's lots of awkward angles. So I'll catch you in a bit when I'm back on when I've finished marking all this up and I'm on to doing that. Finally, on this piece, I've also been marking in the back the bottom 3mm line, which is the depth of the material base, because it'll actually be on the exterior of the base, attached that way. The centre line, which it's got the two lines because ideally the centerboard will run in between those two lines, that's the width of the material, and then just the top lines for each of the floors, except for the roof, where I think I've put the bottom line on. So that should be Oh no, it is a top line. The reason I put the top line on for the roof is although the roof should slot in by itself and it should fit in naturally, it might not. So yeah, I'm going to crack on, and when I get to the fiddly bits on the front, I will, because the front of the building has all this malarkey going on, so when I get onto that I will show you how I'm going about marking that out, because that's going to be a nuisance. Okay, so I'll see you in a moment. Hey there, so just the last bit for the moment. This will be all of the key pieces marked up. Haven't quite finished doing this, but again, when you're doing complicated things like this, I'm not going to show you me doing it because it takes a long time. Just one note is I've been doing 10mm borders on a lot of things, only 7mm on this because it's going to have the wall from the sides are going to be butted up against the outside, so I always want 10mm depth. So 3mm depth of material, 7mm makes a 10mm width overall. This is partly just to keep the aspects right, so when you're looking at it from different angles, it's clearly visible. Again, it's all about knowing your dimensions and putting in your horizontal guides right. As you can probably see in around here, I did totally bodge up the measurements because I took the measurements from the wrong points. I was looking at the wrong measurements on the drawings. So again, be careful when you're measuring up. Also, again, as you can see, the stairwells are going to be in here, so this is all going to be cut out, so it's got a lot of reach-in space, so you can get into each floor quite as easily as I can possibly manage, enough reach-in to get into the upstairs area. Also a lot of cover, so that it is blocking line of sight at ground level. Like I said, I'm trying to keep these buildings accessible from the exterior of the building, so you don't have to be sort of lifting floors off and gaining access to the interiors that way, but also I'm trying to maintain sort of the line of sight blocking qualities. So again, I hope this is useful, and especially because of like complicated shapes like this and the awkwardness of marking them up, I put in all of the stair elevations. So once this is cut out, I'll have all the elevations pre-marked on here for the top edge of each step so that I can fit them in as easily as possible. You might also notice that this door is actually cut out, it isn't coming straight down. It's because it's going to be on a base, so there'll be this will have the base. I'm just going to grab this. It will be at floor level, so the 3mm material depth has to take that into account. Yeah, so I hope this is of some use to you all, and maybe even inspire you to build your own. They do take a lot of time. I mean, I'm putting together 4 simultaneously, and I've put in about not including the drawings, the actual just marking everything up. I think it's and cutting out the key pieces. Take into account I haven't even cut out all of the pieces yet, but there'll be a fitting thing. So I'm fitting is I'm going to be doing sort of the internal floors for the stairwell, the individual stairs, and the dividers for the rooms and the flats, and then the front parts of the flat, which are just off camera. But if I just sort of these doorways. I'll do all of this stuff afterwards because I'm going to be leaving sort of this area open, so it's like glass with a doorway with a sort of minimalistic frame, if you like, in it. I still haven't quite worked out. I might make hinge doors, in which case again you'll get to see how I go about making those. So I hope this is some use to you. Take care everybody, and have fun and enjoy. Make the most out of your building time. See you later.